Okay, I know I'm used to saying hello to a few people, so if I haven't said hello and welcomed you in, welcome in. It's good to see people coming in. Um, I was going to type an answer there for you, Seashell, and then I realised that it was time to go live, so I thought I might as well just put it out there. I went through all the Janie audio, and I know that we heard her specifically say about dragging Jack through the woods, and I haven't found it yet. But I haven't given up. I will find it. Um, I'm not sure if it's one of those instances where she might have started saying it and corrected herself, and maybe that's why I can't find it in transcripts. But I'm going to keep looking for it because I'm sure we heard that. Um, unless I'm losing the plot. I mean, who knows? It's been 14 months, so it's easy to lose track of what's been said over 14 months. You have a copy. You've got it. Cool. I have to try and get that off you somehow. Real heat wave there, 104 degrees. That is warm. That is a bit too warm. Anything above 100 for me, I think. I'm just trying to do the calculations in my head. But anything above 100 is too hot, in my opinion. I kind of like, late 20s to mid 30s. I can send it to you, but is there a way to share to you? I'll just get you to send it to me on my email, which I'll just put that up for a moment, and then I'll put the link back up for Josh's channel. Let me see. So that one's my email, and I'll just leave that up for a little while. I definitely heard her say it. I swear. I think I need to just have a day where instead of just, working on other things, I just spend time just going back through old audio, see if there's anything new that I pick up on, and find the stuff like that should be really easy to find. Okay, I'll put Josh's channel back up in a minute. I've also got a ticker with Chris's channel, and I'll come back to talking about them in just a minute. Still got people coming in, so welcome in Blue Bears. Now, before we get on to this, some of you are probably following this case that I've started talking about a few days ago. This is a young lady called Sally Contarino. She's from my home state. She's from Victoria, down on the Mornington Peninsula area, or actually I'm not sure, but down Melbourne way. She's been missing for over a week now from the Nevada area, more specifically from Mount Charleston in Nevada, which is about half an hour's drive from Las Vegas. There's some more information that I've come across from, digging a little bit in the last 24 hours. The more I learn about the case, the more disturbing it is. I'm just going to play this Fox News story just briefly to give you a bit of an idea. But yeah, I found some more slightly disturbing information just from digging yesterday, which I will share in a live stream later today. It'll probably be one of my after dinner style live streams, I reckon. I kind of like those ones because they're after dinner, towards the end of the day when I'm ready to relax and don't want to be doing lots of research. So I'll just quickly play this news story, and then we'll move back on to Lily and Jack, and more specifically to Josh and Chris.
And authorities are still looking for a woman visiting from Australia. Take a good look at your screen. They say she disappeared while on a trip in our area. 26-year-old Sally Contarino had been in the U.S. on a trip with stops for Southern California, Mount Charleston, and Las Vegas. Her family says she didn't come home to Australia when she was supposed to, and they haven't heard from her since last Saturday, the 20th. If you've seen her or have any idea where she might be, you are asked to contact Metro Police.
Okay, just a bit of a teaser for you there. I'm not going to play the video. But there's a video that surfaced of some guy who was basically filming her with like those Ray-Ban glasses that you film people with. So filming her without her knowledge, and he posted it on his Facebook page and his Instagram, and I find the guy really disturbing. So I'm going to talk about that in my live stream this evening. But I'm going to move on from that back to Lily and Jack. Now, just trying to find. Okay, just bring this up momentarily, and I'll pause when it comes up. Oh, wrong video. Okay, that's not the one. This one.
July.
It is suspicious. The one clarification that we do have in terms of her luggage being left behind is that she intentionally left it behind. She basically checked out from the place where she was staying, and she left her luggage there because she was headed to Mount Charlotte to go hiking. It seems that the last sighting that they've confirmed now is her getting off the bus at Mount Charlotte at one of the hiking areas. But I will come back to that. Now, before I go to Chris and Josh, I've put together a compilation of clips that I think tie in with what Chris and Josh are talking about in this video. But I first of all probably need to explain to some people who Chris and Josh are. You've probably heard me talk about them a lot. They are one of the channels that I've followed for a very, very long time. So they are both their channels were some of the original channels that have been covering Summer Wells's case from day one. And I can't remember whether I came across Chris first or Josh first, but I've followed them since Summer Wells went missing, essentially. Now, Josh his channel is The Lab. He's just pure legend. I don't think he's ever really given his background, but he's very intuitive. He's picks up on a lot of things, and he's just really easy to listen to. He's just one of the good guys on YouTube. So he covers a lot of true crime cases. I think at the moment, him and Chris are focusing a lot on Nancy Guthrie, but they do keep going back to Summer Wells's case. When Lily and Jack went missing, Josh did 3 videos, I believe, talking about Lily and Jack's case, but they haven't come back to it. Chris McDonough is like pure legend. So his channel is The Interview Room. Now, it started out with just pretty much Chris on there. And then his wife Karen has now come in, and she's a semi-regular part of the channel as well. So yeah, Josh can be funny. I think Josh is just he's the perfect package in terms of a channel host. He he can be funny without being disrespectful. He does his research. So Chris and Josh, both their channels, you know that when you go there to their channels, you're going to get good, solid, hard facts. You're going to get the information you're looking for. You know, they're not going to jump on and just wing it. So Chris McDonough, he is a retired homicide detective. And he's one of these retired detectives that just seems to have this sixth sense in terms of criminology, in terms of profiling cases and things like that. I suspect that he's rarely wrong. And just watching him in action is just something else. So he had a very long history as a detective. And he did work with or help with a lot of high-profile cases. I know he was involved in some way with the JonBenet Ramsey case. He's also had a lot of his own cases that have, you know, been highly successful. I won't go into that, but if you do want to learn more about Chris, he's got a web page as well, which is just the interview room. You go there and you can have a look at his bio, as well as doing his YouTube stuff. He works with the Cold Case Foundation, and they're a bunch of retired lawyers, detectives, analysts, all those sorts of things that work cold cases and things. So they are very instrumental. They've done a lot of work in the background with cases. They had a big role with the Michael Vaughan case in the background, and Chris kept it very quiet until there was a press conference, and Chris is there standing in the background, and everyone's like watching and thinking, what the heck? And then Chris was like, yeah, you know, we were involved, we were part of the investigation. They tend not to say when they're involved with other ongoing investigations, but they are like the cream of the crop in terms of any sort of case investigation. So that's something else that Chris involves himself with or is part of. And he quite often on his channel gets guests from the Cold Case Foundation that are just phenomenal to listen to. His offsider, or I should say his partner, I think he refers to her as his better half, is his wife, Karen. Karen is a investigative journalist, and she is also as brilliant as Chris in her own way. She's also very insightful. She picks up on a lot of things, and she's so empathetic too. So when her and Chris are together on Chris's channel, they're just the perfect duo. For this video, it's Chris and Josh, and it's on Josh's channel, which is called The Lab. Now, I've got two separate banners. I'll run Josh's banner for now. I can highly recommend both channels because they're cream of the crop. They're those channels that have been around, they've proven their worth. Definitely if you follow the Summer Wells case, they're worth following for that. any cases that they're covering that interest you are worth going over there and watching their content. I did play quite some time back. There was a video that Chris and Karen put out where they went to the location where Melody Buzzard was found. And I played that on one of my live streams. So they have done a little bit on Melody's case. But, you know, Chris has got the longest playlist imaginable. Josh has got the longest playlist imaginable. All I'm going to say is if you like what you see in this video or in this live stream, then check them out. Now, okay, so I've got a series of clips which I think kind of tie in with Chris and Josh. I've kind of made the video a bit long, so I'm not sure if I'm going to play it all, but I'm going to jump in, play what I've got, maybe skip through bits, I'm not sure, but let's just watch this first, and then we'll move on to Chris and Josh.
The reason why I wanted you guys to come here, do the interview here, is to show you exactly where everything took place. And to show people that this is what happened.
So I asked her, I said, we're here to search. So you know your kids, you're the mom. Moms know their kids. You know what takes their interest, where they like to go around the yard, where you have to get after them all the time. And she said they always like to play up by their fort. So I told her we would start up there. So we headed out, and that's where we started.
Now you can see there's 2 swings where the kids play. My bedroom is right there. I heard the kids. This is where the kids' swings are. This is where they always played.
And so that's where
I heard them. And I can hear everything in that trailer. If 2 kids get out of a fence, and Jack and Lily are all the time yelling, especially Lily, come on, Jackie, let's go, Jackie, let's go, Jackie. It's all I hear out here. When the kids get out of the fence and come out through here, I would have heard them yelling, come on, Jackie, let's go, Jackie, let's go. I didn't hear anything. The next thing I heard is I heard Daniel yelling. He was yelling for Jack and Lily. I didn't get up because I thought he was yelling for Jack and Lily in the house. So the next thing you know, I came out of the trailer after I heard Daniel, about, I'd say, 10 minutes after I heard him, I come out of the trailer. I opened up the door, was standing here. Malaya was standing right here with Meadow on her hip. And I come out and I said, what's up? She said, Jack and Lily are missing. I said, how long? She said, about 20 minutes. I closed the door, got my boots on, came out here, ran up in the woods. Just right up here. The kids have a little fort that they made out of sticks and fir branches. And that's where they go. You can see them and hear them. We went for walks in the woods. I had to practically carry Jack through the woods because there was no way that he was walking through all that tree falls and bushes. Because when she told me the kids were missing, you automatically think they went into the woods.
How do I know they weren't in the woods since such a brief search? I know those kids. I've observed those kids. As I said, I walked with those kids through the woods. I had to carry Jack through the woods. He wouldn't go through the woods. He would stand there. He wouldn't go over a branch. He wouldn't go under a branch. I had to carry him over them. So I know they're not in the woods. As I said, I don't even like going through the woods because I don't like walking over trees and branches and bush. Could you imagine a 6 and a 4-year-old going through the woods? You guys seen through videos of what the searchers went through. There's no way that a 6 and a 4-year-old could go through those woods. Believe me.
And for what she said about Jack and Lily wandering, that's a bunch of BS. The only time they go anywhere up in the woods is when my other two grandchildren are here. And the kids have never wandered away or never gone in the woods by themselves in the last 2 years. Why all of a sudden would they do it Friday morning?
So Jack and Lily would not have walked in the woods. The only distance they would have walked is up to their little fort that they built. Lily is scared of bugs and spiders, the opposite of Jack. But here is something that I want to ask you guys and get your input. If the kids were out in the yard by themselves, let's just say, and they get out of the gate and we're running up the driveway, I would know, or I would think the kids would be saying, especially Lily, come on, Jackie, let's go, Jackie, because that's all she ever did was say that. Even up in the woods with my other two grandchildren, if Jack is sitting there looking for bugs, Lily's usually saying, come on, Jackie, let's go.
The only times those kids go into the woods is where they have their little cabins. Now, Daniel's two oldest kids started making the little cabin up there in the woods. Jack and Lily went up and helped them. They went up there and they built that little cabin. That's as far as they go. They're an earshot from us. We can hear them. We kept an eye on them. So that's as far as they would go. And the only time they would go into the woods is when the other two grandchildren were here.
Thursday when I opened up the door, Jack and Lily were right beside the playhouse looking for worms under a board. Jack said to me, look, Granny, I found a worm, I found a centipede. I said, good boy, you keep looking. So I was out there doing my fence. Jack and Lily were in the backyard playing. I came in the house to have some supper. I do not know when the kids went in the house. I don't know what time they went to bed. I don't know anything of that.
They played in the yard. I was raking. I was working on my fence. I went inside. They came inside. After that, I don't know what happened.
Jack and Lily never left that fence. When they get out of the fence, they were told get back in it. And they would back in there.
And then when my two oldest grandchildren would come down, every second weekend they would come. My oldest granddaughter would come in here and they'd say, Granny, we want some snacks to go up to the little cabin they built or the little fort they built. They built it themselves out of sticks and brush. And I'd say, there's the fridge. My other two grandchildren, they could have whatever they wanted. My fridge was like one of those doors when you go into a store. It would open and close all the time. My oldest granddaughter would come in here and she would take snacks for all of them and pack them in her backpack and go up to the camp. The backpack thing. I've never seen Lily outside with that backpack. Daniel told me that they always tried to keep her from taking it outside, but I've never seen her with that pack. The only time outside playing, but the time I did see her with the backpack is when my two other grandchildren would come down. She'd want a backpack too because the oldest grandchild had a backpack and she wanted to be just like her.
I ran up in the woods to the kids. They have cabins up in the woods. It's about, 100 feet up in the woods.
Do you think your son had anything to do with the disappearance of Jack and Lily?
No, I don't believe Daniel had anything to do with the disappearance of Jack and Lily. Our heart don't lie, and my heart is telling me that my kid did not have nothing to do with this, and I had nothing to do with this.
I remember one day we caught a salamander, him and I. And Daniel said, Jack, you have to let the salamander go because if not, it'll die. Well, I snuck the salamander out of the bucket. And he looked for that salamander. And he cried because we let his salamander go.
And Jack was much more adventurous than, Lily was with grabbing bugs and grabbing insects. Like, I've watched him grab centipedes before, and he had no fear of bugs at all, and he just loved to going around the yard and collecting them. Like he would have a whole variety in a bucket of everything he could find, and yeah, it was very happy and interesting. Like
Thank
the
you
way
so
of
much for
doing
sharing
things.
that.
He was a curious little boy. That's all he would do all day. When he was outside was sit and turn boards over or rocks over looking for bugs and worms.
I ran up in the woods to the kids. They have cabins up in the woods.
Unmute the mic. You'd think I would learn. That's a compilation of things that I think tie in with this area up in the woods. And I think it also ties in with what is discussed by Chris and Josh in here. Yeah, the difference in tone, when she talks about her grandkids, they can go into her RV and they can get anything they like out of her fridge. But everything about Jack and Lily is so negative, even the harshness in her voice. Yeah. I wonder if the resentment is only after Lily and Jack, whatever happened to them, because maybe, well, they all seem to blame Lily and Jack. So maybe in her mind, this is her blaming Lily and Jack because her whole world has been turned upside down. But there's such a huge difference between the way she talks about her grandchildren and the way she talks about Lily and Jack. And it really grates on me when she says that they would call her granny, because I find that so unlikely. Well, that's what I wonder, if this is her way of coping with the situation. Because quite often in cases like this, when people are involved, the victim blaming comes out because it's their way of mentally coping with, their role, basically. Yeah. And yeah, we know you mean Jack. Listening to Daniel when he's talking about Jack and him collecting bugs and worms in the bucket, he was really struggling with that. And it was something that stood out to me big time, because it was just a real departure from everything else we've heard from Daniel. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't help them sleep. It just, in my opinion, it just makes the guilt worse. And I think they're going to find it harder and harder to live with what they've done. Yeah. See, I wouldn't be surprised if Daniel did actually pass the polygraph exam, because I think Daniel is the sort of person that could convince himself of, innocence, and could easily convince a polygraph exam. Yes, Janie is so reactive when it comes to Daniel's involvement. It was. It was really, it was a huge red flag for me. Huge red flag. Okay, so I'm going to jump into this some of this live stream from Chris and Josh. So what I've done is the live stream itself is about 2.5 hours long. And what I've done is I've gone through, and there's so much more that when I first went through and clipped it, I probably had about an hour and a half's worth of stuff. And that was just me going, okay, stop now. And I managed to trim it back to about half an hour's worth of audio, which I won't get through in all this live stream. But I do strongly recommend, and I've put the link for this live stream in the description. I've also got the links for Chris and Josh in the description as well. But I've also done the tagging them where I've just gone at the lab or at the interview room. And if you click on that, it'll also take you to their channel to subscribe if you like what you are hearing here. So all credit here to Josh Diaz and Chris McDonough for what I'm about to start going through. So let's add this to stage.
So here's the property where they went missing from in Nova Scotia.
I'm just going to point out for anyone who came in a bit later. So this is Josh's channel, The Lab. Worth following. He covers lots of true crime cases, always does his research, does his best to make sure that he knows every element of a case, throws in humour without being disrespectful. Chris, retired homicide detective, best of the best in my opinion. They've both covered the Summer Wells case, so there will be references here to Summer's case. Yeah, the rubbish behind the fence, and you know what? Chris homes in on that straight up.
Initial thoughts on the property.
Well, it looks.
You know when Chris pauses like that he's trying to put his thoughts in a way that isn't going to basically be a little bit less than diplomatic. Let's put it that way.
Like Don and Candace's vacation rental.
Yeah.
Very similar.
I mean, that sort of jumped off the page to me as well.
Well, it's contained. I mean, you see various fences. Can you zoom in to the top by any way?
Right here?
Yeah, but to the trash bin up by the, looks like a river bed up there where all the trash is.
Let's see here.
Okay. Is that possible?
Oh, we're gonna find out together. Better photo of it. But what do you look? What catches your eye?
I wanted to see that ravine area up there.
I'm just going to pause there. Straight up, when I started going back and looking at this, the things that Chris has homed in on in the first few minutes of looking at this case are things that took the rest of us forever to home in on. He's homed in on that gully behind Janie's RV. I didn't even notice it until I was looking at the LiDAR stuff. But Chris has straight away spotted it.
And the garbage up there?
Back here.
Yeah, back there. All that area.
Okay. So
this is footage from when Tint did the I think it was May. He went and did another thing with his drone. And this, you can see they've cleaned it up a bit, but you can also see the little creek that runs through. Yeah, it was interesting how the garbage got cleaned up. They've certainly gone through and done a lot of cleaning up on the property. But with it cleaned up, that shows from this footage from Tint that there's actually a bridge that goes across that little waterway. Yeah, true, we're not cops, so we don't see things. Chris just sees things instantly. So, he saw this for what it was. Whereas, for me, I needed all the rubbish cleared up and drone footage that honed in when there was water there to actually see this. But yeah, so that's what it looks like now, and that shows exactly the area that Chris is talking about. And I think I might have thrown the LiDAR stuff in as well. Yep. Yeah, it is hard to pick one thing out that stands out. And I guess with Chris, it comes down to experience of knowing what things look out of place. Yeah, Chris did live and breathe it daily. And I think also, he does just have this instinct when it comes to this sort of thing. So just pulling up the LiDAR just quickly. So the little little yellow hand is pointing to the trailer. Then you've got that massive gully uphill from the trailer, which is where that water was coming down from. And I've also circled what are possibly old wells or old mine shafts. Something that shows up on LiDAR anyway. I've spoken about this a lot, so I'm not going to go into it too much, but I just wanted to show you how it is actually quite significant. And, Chris spotted that really quickly. Okay, waiting
And
for
at
it.
the same time, how do police deal with the family as they go through their investigation? So in terms of the stepfather, how has he been reacting to today's update?
So he's been speaking with us every day, speaking with lots of media every day, trying to get the word out, making pleas to the community for people to come forward, because he has been saying that he thinks this is an abduction. He's been calling for an Amber Alert to be sent out. He's been calling for checkpoints at the...
That's another there was no Amber Alert because it doesn't fit the criteria of an Amber Alert situation.
Board.
I totally agree with you, Seashell. And Josh actually plays that part of that interview. And Chris's observation certainly seems to be along those lines.
And at the airports, I asked RCMP about that today, if they have any new information that could lead them to think it's an abduction. They wouldn't comment on that and said there's no information that can be publicly released. So the stepdad today is, he said he's exhausted. He said he's still holding out hope, but he had a briefing and they told him about the change in the search. And here's what he had to say about that.
Okay, so you're going to get to hear from stepdad here.
Well, I know they can't go forever. I mean, there's search and rescue workers searchers that have already been injured. They've spent so much resources. I mean, resources doesn't matter at this point, but I mean, everybody's tired. There's some people that I don't think they even went home.
By the way,
I cracked up when I saw this. There is a good dynamic between these two, I have to say. It was an interesting bridge. It looks like it was built from junk. When Chris's radar has gone up. I do agree. I think Daniel was expecting evidence to be found. When he's talking about, I'm surprised I didn't find anything like Jack's pull-up or Lily's bag or something. But the thing is, we don't know if they found evidence and just kept it silent. Especially when you've got Daniel coming out and making comments like that. Okay, let's hear what Chris has to say.
I'm not laughing, but it's deja vu.
Yeah.
Who does that sound like to a T?
Okay, sorry, that's my cue to speak. For anyone who is not familiar with the Summer Wells case, you're just about to get a snippet of a news interview with Summer Wells's father, Don Wells, not long after she went missing. So Summer went missing in July 2021. I think it was 15th of July. Like, oh my gosh, we're nearly going on to 5 years. And huge red flags when it comes to her family.
But I'm sorry that they had to spend so many man hours in these woods and everything. I've seen them limping and everything else, you know, and I feel for them.
If you put them next to each other, they're carbon copies.
I'm going to. I'm going to make a video about it, but it's crazy.
Okay,
I remember when Tom was like, they were dragging their legs, and some of them ain't even went home.
Okay, first of all, he's worried.
I agree, Charlotte. There is definitely a reason they called off the search when they did. Now, someone questioned yesterday if it could have been from Brad Wong coming forward. He came forward on the 9th, so they actually called the search off before Brad came forward. But I did go through the documents, and there were things that came up for around the 7th that did make me think that definitely there was a shift on the 7th that made them decide, yeah, these kids aren't in the woods and we need to change direction. That's a good point too. Maybe they were burnt in the wood stove, and maybe that's why he's saying he's surprised they didn't find the evidence. Because it certainly sounds like the dog handlers were interested in the wood stove. Good point.
The searchers and their well-being.
Correct.
Okay. Last time I checked, there's a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old out there. And he's worried about somebody limping in from searching for the 6 and the 4-year-old. Okay, so that's a transfer of non-incidental behavior, i.e., shouldn't you be worrying about you limping because you're tired of looking for your kids or stepkids or so that right there is a absolute 100%. This is an interesting dynamic with social media and the power of these platforms. And I would submit to you that a lot of these suspects or subjects learn from others. And they watch how, these things kind of unfold because, if you think about it, go back and play exactly what he said again. Can you do?
I find it amazing here that Chris has already nailed Daniel's character, in my opinion. He's talking about these types of people learning from social media and also learning from past cases. And that seems to definitely be the case with Daniel. Now, one thing I forgot to mention too, if you go back and watch the full live stream, and it is worth watching, just bear in mind that this was recorded in May last year. So there's some bits of information that have since been corrected. So, for example, when Chris is asking Josh about the family dynamic, Josh is thinking the story about Cody being on house arrest and stuff like that. So there is some things that we now know the truth of, but that wasn't known back then. So just something to keep in mind if you do go and watch the full live stream. Yes, he's definitely a copycat. Yeah, I don't think if they had burnt the boots or anything with like a zipper or anything, then they would have found evidence of that when they were searching in those first few days. So I don't think anything like that would have been burnt in that stove, oven, wood heater thingy. But it is a sensitivity for Daniel. You can get rapid mix cement too that'll go solid in like, a couple of hours. It takes longer to cure, but it'll go rock hard in a couple of hours. Was it Logan that said that? See, I remember hearing that being discussed, but I never knew where that came from. Yeah, why? When you look at the early images of Janie's RV, you have the smokestack, and then in the later images, it's been removed. It's interesting. Yes, you can mix cement in a wheelbarrow. Gee, did we see wheelbarrows on that property? I believe we did. Welcome in, Ernestine.
Josh, is that possible?
Injured.
The stepdad today is, he said he's exhausted. He said he's still holding out hope, but he had a briefing and they told him about the change in the search, and here's what he had to say about that.
Well, I know they can't go forever. I mean, there's search and rescue workers searchers that have already been injured. They've spent so much resources. I mean, resources doesn't matter at this point, but I mean, everybody's tired. There's some people that I don't think they even went home.
See, stop. Okay.
And the stepfather's been...
Did you hear one word about the kids?
No, I didn't actually.
Everything was about the resources, and he's worried about the well-being of the researchers, of the searchers.
Yeah.
Okay. That, again, it's this, mask that he's wearing. He knows more than what he's telling you. And I will tell you that from the get-go. That's the first time I've seen the guy. But just from that little 30-second soundbite, there's more to this story. What?
He had Daniel nailed from like 30 seconds in. And it's interesting that he referred to Daniel as having a mask, because that's actually something that I was talking about with those early interviews, because he was masking his facial expressions and stuff. Yeah, this is why I wanted to go through this, especially in retrospect, now that we've kind of had time to catch up to Chris a bit. He really makes some good points. And a lot of the clips that I've used here are because he's making really good points, things that are really obvious to us now, and things that he was seeing immediately. Yeah, look, for me, the red flag was straight away the moment I saw the interview with Daniel where he's doing the fake crying. And that was, only a few seconds, and I was right. I looked at it and went, right, yeah, I know where this case is headed. Chris is really good at verbalizing what it is that is the red flags, in my opinion.
You have other stuff on him, and
yeah, I have.
Go ahead. I don't want to get ahead of you.
I think as long as people keep in mind not to be nasty and not to be mean and not to say things that may have no truth to
Oh, go back.
them at all. It's human nature to say, well, what did happen? And
I'm just going to pause there. Yes, Malaya's interview that gave us a lot. I want to do a separate live stream where Chris talks about that, because there was a lot in this live stream with him and Josh where when he watched Malaya's interview, he had a lot to say. And I was sitting there last night trying to kind of edit all that in, and I went, there's no way I'm going to get through all this in one live stream. Canada Day tomorrow. I wonder if MBM will be on the beach. Also, people head to the beach on Canada Day. That sounds a bit like Australia Day. Barbecues and beach and warm weather. Okay, I'll unpin that. Just having a look at. Yep. Can you believe June 15th, not July. So we've already hit the 5-year anniversary. I was thinking July 15th. I had the 15th right. So Summer went missing June 15th from Hawkins County. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation and Hawkins County Sheriff have her case. No sightings, no credible information, and now the FBI are involved. So hopefully that will lead to something, because Summer is well past being due for justice. It's Canada Day every day for Malaya. Just looking at this, and I know Ernestine's a little bit behind us. The Australian girl that was hiking, or the Australian lady that was hiking in Nova Scotia, they called that search off. So chances are her family will never get answers, which is really heartbreaking.
suspicions arise and whatnot. I think as long as people keep in mind not to be nasty and not to be mean and not to say things that may.
Okay, see, so this is significant, even though it looks insignificant. What's significant about this?
This photo right here?
Yeah, this fort, this environment.
I don't know.
Well,
I spotted another bucket too when I was going through this. You can see a black bucket in the background. But I find it interesting that straight up, Chris is looking at this and going, yep, there's something about this. Again, it just shows us he's got that lifetime of experience behind him. And I really wish he would take another look at this case.
right, the first thing we have to recognize is it's a secondary place that is off of the control boundary. They have the green fence, they have all the other fence, and everything is fenced in, right?
Okay, so I needed to bring this image
So
up.
the kids.
Whoops. Just back that back a little smidgen. Yeah, I wonder if they had bought buckets, those buckets at Dollarama. Just reading comments here. Don't know what they sell at Dollarama. I could have sworn Logan said they went to the hardware store. Their timing is off on that Dollarama trip. It takes too long. Although the information in the dockets, in the documents, in terms of their Google timelines, has to be accurate, because basically that's coming directly off Google, so their GPS. So, and they've also got camera footage from Dollarama. So I don't know if that timing is off. I had heard the story of them going to the hardware store. Maybe that was another time. I don't think it's ever been verified. And I think they came out later and said that it wasn't correct. So that's sort of one of those things like, do we go with it or not? Not only did Daniel leave his phone home that entire day when he was searching, but Janie also happened to leave her phone at home when she went running up into the woods, searching for Lily and Jack, even though they don't ever go into the woods. Coincidence? I think not. Chris really is fantastic. I love when he has these guests, because he does. He gets your retired FBI criminal profilers, brilliant criminal profilers. Billy Little, brilliant lawyer. I mean, it's pretty much thanks to them that the Dee Warner case moved on and that Dale Warner finally got convicted. Was he planting Dollarama stuff around the property? Don't know. I hadn't thought about that. So, whoops, where's that gone? Yeah, that is a bit odd. That's the little cubby house with the tarp on only half of the roof. There's tarp out the back. I won't try and find photos. Oh, Detective Tam's in here. Welcome in, Detective Tam. When you look at photos that show around behind the woodshed, you can see a tarp that's there. So maybe it was ripped off the cubby house to cover something on the back of the woodshed. And I hadn't actually thought about the significance of that. That's a good thing to point out there, Charlotte. I hadn't considered. So Chris and Josh are looking at this with the perspective of thinking this yard is closed off. Now, I remember around this time putting a video out showing people that there was no gate at the end there. I don't think there was a clear enough image that... No, I think I must have used this image, because this is from CBC, and this is one of the first drone footage images. So you can see there the unfinished fence that Janie was apparently working on. You can see the inside fence that's just this messy wire fence. And you can see really clearly that there's no gate. But I do remember that around the time that Josh and Chris were doing this, a lot of people were saying, well, it was all enclosed. And I know a few people came back at me when I came out and said, look, it's not enclosed. And they're like, why does it matter? And I'm like, well, it does matter. So it's interesting that Chris has brought this up. But at the time, obviously, they couldn't see that it actually wasn't enclosed. Just having a quick look. Yes, it does seem like Daniel was multitasking and not finishing anything. Yeah, so the roof without the tarp, that's the little play centre. You've got the slide coming off the other side. Yeah, Malaya originally did state that the story, the change in the stories about phone reception, about where they could ring from, was just insane. Yes, all the comments that Daniel make are about them going through the fence, him and Malaya. And even when he talks about, going up the hill, he went through the fence. Sorry, it'll come up.
Right. So the kids play outside the fenced area. Exactly, Kaylee.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now we have water in this fort. Okay. Well, what does that mean? That water bottle came probably from the house. Okay. So that's my question earlier. What are the rules with a 6-year-old? Let's just use Lily. Is that a hair, thing that she would, put her hair in? What are these two other red things that are off to the left? I don't know. We'd have to zoom in a little bit closer.
Maybe they're markers. Maybe they marked them.
I don't know.
I don't either.
Okay. But the water bottle is significant because that tells us, okay, that somebody or someone has said, take water when you're playing, or they're in there playing with them and they have water. Okay, so is this a child fort, or is this an area that somebody could take a child for other reasons?
Just bearing in mind, Chris has got like 30 years experience as a homicide detective. A lot of the child abduction cases that he's worked involve darker things happening. This is coming from a perspective where he doesn't know the full details of the case. So what he's referring to here, on one hand, it doesn't apply in terms of an adult taking children up there for a reason. I can see where he's coming from, but it just doesn't fit with this case. But the fact that he has sort of looked at this area and gone, this is significant, definitely stands out to me. I've edited out a lot of that discussion because I don't think it is relevant in this case. But at the same time, I also have to recognise that, this is coming from a detective with 30 years experience. So maybe he sees something that we don't, but I'm not there. How long could DNA survive on bones from perp? It won't survive on bones, but if there's any materials that survive, then yes, it would. I think in terms of now, if they find Lily and Jack's remains, it's going to be more about if the bones can tell a story. I don't think they're going to be able to find anything in terms of DNA that would be evidentiary. I think he just hinted at it. Now, I didn't re-listen to the entire live stream because I was trying to get all these clips together. But he did refer to it as along those lines, but I'm not sure if he specifically said a secondary crime scene. But he was paying a lot of attention to this area.
Okay. But I would want to know everything I could about this environment, as stupid as that sounds, because if you get to a situation where you're talking to somebody and there's been some foul play involved here, okay, one of the things you'd want to know is, so tell me about the fort outside. And those are the kind of questions, when you throw that at somebody with jeopardy internally, they're not expecting that question. They're expecting to answer the question about the house, about the yard, about the environment. And this would be what could potentially be considered a secondary environment.
And this is, again, where we've seen leakage from Daniel, where he's been focusing on one thing and the leakage has come out about something else. So I can't think of an example right now, but I have discussed it kind of recently, where he's been so focused on something else that's when we've had the leakage that's given us a bit more information. It is such a sensitive area for them, both Daniel and Janie. And the huge red flag for me is Janie bending over backwards to tell people that the kids wouldn't go up there on their own unless they went up with her grandkids. But then Malaya said to Belinda, when Belinda said, your kids, where would they play? And straight up Malaya says, oh, they love to go up and play up here. So that's a huge, huge red flag for me. And both Janie and Daniel took reporters up to this area, because that footage from CBC from May 7th was Daniel taking reporters up there. Yep. What Charlotte's saying here in their uncensored group, anytime the cabins came up, the conversation got derailed. No. I've sent messages to Josh. I emailed Chris. I believe Daphne also touched base with Chris, asking for him to take another look at the case. I just don't think the message has been received. Either that or they're just so busy with other cases that it hasn't been a consideration. But I think given how much there is that we know now, it just seems to me that it would be really good if Chris could come and have another look. Not one YouTuber has made a plea to the guilty consistently. There's a few times when I've kind of made references, but yeah, I think it's beyond that because I think at this point in time they're not going to come forward. I used to say a few times that you know only one person gets a deal, but I think at this point in time nobody's getting a deal. I think it's too late for that. I think now if anyone went forward, it would be considered mitigating circumstances and it would probably get a significantly reduced sentence, but I don't think they'd be given a deal.
Because the news caught this. The news went up to this little tree line here, and it's obviously not made by a 6-year-old or a 4-year-old. Okay, so who's making this? Is it the stepdad? Is it the uncle? Who is it?
Okay, so I just want to point out that it wasn't exactly the news that caught it because Daniel took them up there after one of his interviews. But I don't know who the cameramen are with CBC, but what I enjoy with watching any of these CBC interviews is the things that they zoom in on, the things that they show in these interviews, especially Janie's interview when she's talking about raking the gravel and you get this zoom in on the driveway and it's rock hard and you're looking at it and thinking, well, you're not raking that area. And you can see the grass spouting up. So Chris is sort of only half right here. But again, this is him looking at this straight up, no background knowledge on the case. Janie's facts on Friday do not add up. And this was something that I brought up. I did a series that was 2 or 3 videos that was quite lengthy, probably going back 7 or 8 months ago, where I looked at Janie's narrative and showed the way that Friday and Thursday seem to overlap. So when she's talking about something from Thursday and then talking about something from Friday, you can get confused in terms of what period in time she's talking about. Oh, that's a bit of a teaser there, Shenanigans. I'm going to have to pin this and then we'll have to go back to you, Chris. I think you will all be surprised to see where Malaya will be tomorrow. Jack and Lily, we will find you. Definitely a bit of a teaser going on there. I'm not going down that rabbit hole right now because I've got so much to go through here with Chris's conversation with Josh, but it's certainly got my interest going. And welcome in, by the way. Okie dokie, bit more.
That's making this, pull back again. It's somewhat of a sophisticated, place.
Yeah, no, not to be wise, and I think as
it's
long
making
as
a
people
mini shelter outside of the control boundaries for the children. Look at that. There's no kid that made that. No 4-year-old, no 6-year-old. So, okay, who's the adult that's making this thing hypothetically, or the teenager or whatever? Who's in the environment around these children that's making this secondary environment?
Yeah.
Welcome in, Chelsea. Just thought I'd pause and say hi. Good to see you in here.
And then the next question is, why?
And also, and then if you go look here, they have, it looks like they have it, somewhat fenced in. But if you look, there's humongous gaps in that fence. Wouldn't be they say that, the father or the mother, I can't remember which one, the stepfather, says that, that they're not the kind of kids that would just go outside without supervision or something along those lines. I mean, I don't believe that this would be their first time getting outside of the compound, if you could call it, or if you.
And again, this time it's Josh who's spot on, because we've got the audio of Janie. First of all, you know, the earlier audio is her hinting at them getting out. You know, if these kids got out of the yard and were running down the driveway, and then more recently we have the audio where she's essentially saying, oh, they didn't get out of the yard because if they got out of the yard, they got yelled at to get back in. So she admits that that it was a thing for them to get out of the yard. And I do think that they probably did spend quite a bit of time up at that little fort. Yes. How often were they left alone to have the opportunity to get out there in the driveway? I think compound. I love the way they said that. I think based on what Janie has said, I suspect that when Janie heard them heading out into the driveway, that could have been instances when she came out and yelled at them to get back in. And maybe that is part of this regret that she talks about, because she did know that they had gotten out into the driveway perhaps. I believe the fort was made around Easter time.
Call it that. And like you said, like you just look, it's a very unkempt. I'm not saying anything about their status financially or anything like that. People live in the houses that they live in. But I mean, this to me would indicate that these toys are outside of look at the toys in the front yard.
Again, another good observation, which, I mean, we noticed the toys were in the front yard, but where they're going with this is not the controlled area. This is outside of the controlled area that didn't have a gate and had holes in the fence. But again, it certainly speaks to them wandering a bit further on the property than what we were being told.
I mean, they're not all fenced in. Everything's not all fenced in that the children are playing with. And then when you go back to this, I mean, this is off the beaten path.
Well, it doesn't look right. DLR.
Wish we could have got what is that right there? Like something like that.
Right. That doesn't look right.
What the hell is that thing?
It's
right?
I don't know. It looks like some kind of bullpen of some sort.
Maybe for an animal. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, who knows, right? It could be for an animal. But the other thing is definitely some type of shelter.
Thank you, Breeze. Very much appreciated.
Okay. And so somebody has made this. And so the question is, okay, well, why did you make this thing? Well, we got cows, we got dogs, we got horses, whatever. So I made a pen. Okay, sounds reasonable. What about this over here, this shelter? Who made that? Oh, Uncle Bobby made it. Okay, why? Why did he make this? And by the way, what is this? Is this a girl scrunchie here? A little girl scrunchie from the hair? Yeah. How'd this get here? Why is it here? Oh, she played.
Yeah, I think when they looked at that, what he's referring to as a pen, I don't think he realised that there's no gate on it. And also clearly he didn't realise that there's no stock either, no animals to put in it. So it is a really odd structure, in my opinion. and I'd very much like to know what the purpose is.
In here, really? Unsupervised or supervised? You see where that type of questioning can go?
Sure, of course.
Okay, so while everybody's focusing on the house, there sometimes you miss the obvious. Okay? And that's why whenever these types of things happen, you start looking for the things that just don't look right. Even
Yes, I think he was quite possibly making an analogy when he said a pen for animals. And it does make me kind of go that way in terms of why would you have that pen with no gate on it if it's a pen? Or is it the base for, someone mentioned yesterday, the possibility, could it be the base for they were going to try and build a cabin on top and then, the floor would go on top of that? Maybe, but it seems a bit flimsy for something like that.
in the disorganization of what could look right, what looks right in that disorganization, the fencing, that looks correct, i.e. they're trying to contain something, okay? And then, you start thinking outside of
It's not a proper fence. There's no gate whatsoever. It's just your... So, StreamYard's playing up, idiot StreamYard. It's stacked up poles with no gate. Well, if it was a dog pen, you'd want to be able to actually open a gate and put a dog in there, because it would be a pain in the ass if you had to lift the dog into it every time and then climb into it to get the dog back out. Did Daniel take down the dividers in their room before the police showed up? Probably not. I think, to me, I don't see the dividers as a huge thing. I know my cousin had a setup with her son's rooms where she had like just one of those fold out screen dividers, the three things on a hinge between her boys' beds, and like a dresser on one side of it, so that their room was kind of separated a bit and they had a little bit of privacy. And it also meant that the youngest, who was a bit hyperactive, could settle more easily at night because he was less likely to chatter. And I do remember, when I was a kid, sharing a room with my sister, and I was obnoxious. I was really obnoxious. So I'm not too worried. Right. This is a common way people build cabins around here. Sometimes the entrance will be hidden upon completion. An entrance from the bottom or from the top. Thank you. So when someone was saying yesterday that it could be the beginning of someone building a cabin, that was quite likely what it was. That's useful to know, because that seems to be the only thing I can think of in terms of why there's no entrance to it or anything. Yeah, it's not old. It's definitely a new thing.
Then, okay. Well, if you go back to the trailer, why is the mattress out there and that piece of metal torn down underneath the trailer? What's going on with that?
Okay, I don't think that's actually a piece of metal. I think that's just like, you know, like tarp kind of material. Yeah, the wood does look old. It was probably a Daniel project that he started and got bored with. There seems to have been a few things that have been started and got bored with. Yeah, the fort was definitely newer. I mean, by whenever Janie did her interview, I think that was June, it had all died off. But it was still really, really fresh at the beginning of May when they went in there with the news crew. But again, we have Chris noticing the mattress out there and the thing coming off the shed. That back porch would not pass a building inspection at all. Yeah, neither structure could have been made by children, that's for sure. My take on that mattress is it actually looks really old. I think it's just this is a rural area where you probably do a tip run once a year or something. And big things like that, you can't put it out for just the regular rubbish collection. So it probably just got dragged out and replaced, in my opinion. This is why I've not really focused on it too much. But Chris does home in on it.
You know, and these are the kind of things you can just kind of start thinking through. Okay, where did this mattress come from? What if you heard somebody say it came from the shelter? Why? Go, Uncle Bobby rests out there. Now, I'm not. That's not the case. Obviously,
Right.
We don't know that, but you'll be surprised what people will say because they don't realize they're saying it because there's a guilty conscience of some sort.
Let me play this for you really quick.
Yeah. This guy here, they woke up in the middle of the night.
The guy on TV?
Yeah.
On the screen here?
Oh, yeah.
I'm out here still searching, still fighting.
Ah, right, yep. Spring cleanup was the next week. So is that like we have like I don't think they do it here in Bendigo, but usually councils do like, you know, a once a year or twice a year large rubbish collection where you put all the big heavy stuff out and then they come around with trucks and collect it. Is that what you're talking about in terms of spring cleanup? Because that would make sense. And the thing is too, if you have big things like that mattress and you're on a property like that, wherever it is that you take stuff like that, you're not just going to keep doing trip after trip. You're going to wait till you've got enough to fill up the back of a truck. So I know people have criticised the things lying around, like the mattress and the washer and stuff like that. But you've got to recognise that in areas like this, it's something where you don't just automatically get rid of it. I'd be interested to know what the regulations are in terms of burning off in places like that. Cool. I thought so. I thought that's what you meant. So the municipal garbage disposal will pick it up at spring cleanup. So there's probably a lot of properties with stuff like that lying around, heading up towards spring cleanup. I don't see it as a huge red flag. We're talking about 4 young children on that property. Like when Daniel's children were there, you have 4 young children under the age of 10. There's always a possibility that one of those children did soil their mattress on a regular basis, and that maybe it just reached a point where they replaced it. Whoops. Aha. Daniel said his older children helped with the construction. I lost the other comment that you made, Charles, that it's way up there now. So I always felt that it would be too hard for Lily and Jack to build. They would be too little. But yeah, I could see older kids with a bit of help building it, but certainly not Lily and Jack. So you have to get a burn permit. Yeah. Okay. Don't believe it's a toddler mattress. It looks like a twin mattress, and there's another one behind the RV. A toddler bed is just a crib mattress on a lower frame. Aha. Yeah, you're right. It's kind of longer, isn't it? Yeah. It makes sense that he would have helped, and I do recall hearing that. It makes sense that he would have helped his children build it. You know, it's just an activity that he can do. Yeah, it was interesting that they had him stand there for that reason. Like, for a pro cameraman to place him there, especially, now I'm not sure which news crew this was, but it was odd placing for that interview, that's for sure.
Find them. That's all I can do.
The message is still, if anyone knows anything.
If anybody knows anything, just come forward as soon as possible.
He parroted. He parroted what the question was.
Yeah, they
2 little kids are still out there.
Gave him the answer.
Go back. Yeah, he parroted. This was not an original thought process.
No, and he picked up on it immediately. And really quick,
that's all I can do.
Straight up. Again, Chris has got Daniel pegged because we've seen how he learns from everything he hears. And he's made a really good point here. I mean, we've spoken about this particular interview before, where basically he only said this because he was prompted by the interviewer. But Chris has named it up perfectly. He does parrot. He learns from listening to what is being asked of him, and he adapts his answers based on what he knows is expected of him. So yeah, it's another thing that, you know, stands out. I think this was probably the first interview I saw with Daniel. I'm not going to run it back, but if this is the one where he's doing that thing with his hand and then he lifts his hand and looks under it to see how it landed with the interviewer, then this would be the first one I saw. But it was definitely one of these ones where he's doing the fake crying and then he peered under his hand to see if the interviewer was buying his soggy bread, as Chris would say.
The message is still, if anyone knows anything.
If anybody knows anything, just come forward as soon as possible. 2 little kids are still out there. I want to find them. That's really all I can do. Still searching every day. I'm waiting for information. I have to let them do a lot of their a lot of their stuff with the aircrafts and everything else.
Who does that sound like?
Who else said that?
Dawn.
They got to do their thing. Okay. And we don't want to get in the ball. We want to thank them, you know, and we'll see her in the resurrection. I can't wait till that shows up here somewhere.
Yeah, Chris will be disappointed. We never got a resurrection comment from Daniel or Janie or anything because they're still too busy pushing that Lily and Jack are still alive. But again, if you hadn't picked it up, they're referring to Don Wells because there are so many similarities between what Don Wells was saying about Summer and what Daniel is saying here. Oh yeah, I see a lot of Chris Watts similarities too. I don't think that's something that Chris and Josh have focused a lot on. So for them, the main thing they see is Don Wells. So when your son was 3, he slept in a twin bed and you put up side rails.
I'm teasing.
And dogs.
I know.
And searchers. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be coordinated, and I can't just go running through the woods. I want to, but I just can't right now because
Dawn said that as well. It's eerie. It really is.
Okay.
I'm still holding out hope. I don't know why they didn't find anything from Jack's pull-up to her,
Okay,
to her
stop.
backpack or.
Okay, there's an expectation right from the get-go that when he starts this interview, he is expecting that there would be a result of something. Okay? Because he says, I don't know why, okay? As in, he's projecting it as a true statement, yet he's shaking his head no.
Right.
So his subconscious mind is saying, well, this is a bunch of garbage, but I'm going to pretend like it's real. Go back again.
Why they didn't find anything.
See how he's shaking his head?
I'm still holding out hope. I don't know why they didn't find anything from Jack's pull-up to her backpack or any of her belongings.
Okay, so looking at it from Chris's perspective, he's essentially saying that Daniel's not surprised that they haven't found any evidence, which makes a lot of sense.
What time did the children get reported missing? 10 a.m.? 8 a.m.?
10, but the dispatch said that they went, that it was reported that they hadn't seen him since 8, I believe. So they took 2 hours allegedly but Chris, I'm not even convinced, and this is just me thinking out loud in pure speculation. I'm not even convinced that that's when they actually went missing that morning.
Yeah, you've got 24, almost 36 hours. Right, so you got all day Thursday and
all day Wednesday.
Okay, so again, this is one of those instances where they don't have the full information. So this was before the news came out that they'd been seen on camera footage on the Thursday. So they didn't quite have 24 hours. But they certainly had potentially more than 12 hours for a cover-up, essentially.
Wednesday or Thursday, yeah. And then you've got a little in the middle. So you got all kinds of room here. The children could have been transported off-site somewhere. You don't know. We don't know
These
yet.
searchers and the police could be days behind by the time they get the call. And that is why I think that
Again, Chris is on it. Clearly the information wasn't out at this time about Brad Wong hearing a vehicle coming and going in the early hours of the morning. And I'd love to hear Chris's perspective on that, because what Chris is talking about here definitely ties in with what we now know in terms of there having been a vehicle heard in those early hours of the morning between like 1 and 5 a.m. by at least 2 people. We don't know if there's more people who've come forward since, because if there were, RCMP is not going to tell us. But, you know, it seems like Chris is pretty much predicting everything that we've discovered in this discussion.
Is apologizing to them because, I mean, once again, just speculation. I don't know.
It's a good point.
But I would think that, like, they're days behind. And I felt that way since the first time I heard this story, that, you know, the week leading up to it is just, yeah, they could have been missing for 48 hours.
And a number of factors would have to take consideration, and they would, based upon scientific information that they have, to deem when is that time.
By the way, when they say this, when they say, you know, if they're out there, we don't believe that they would be alive. They just might not even believe that they're even out there, or that they were ever out there at this point after that thorough search. Now, that could they have missed them? Of course. But, you know, I don't think, it's starting to feel like to me that they don't even think that they were out there.
Well, this is also a psychological positioning with the parents. There's a lot of thought process that goes behind a statement like this to the public. Because what they're doing is they're projecting to the parents, we aren't convinced the children are alive. And so now that has a psychological effect on the parents. What do you mean? What are you saying? That my children are not alive? What's going on here? Why would you say that? And that may be the response they're looking for. Instead, you get the response of everybody sitting back in the investigation going, let's see how they do. And what did they do? You've got the stepdad slicked up, you know, not saying, hey, the cop said my kids are gone. They're dead.
Right.
What kind of reaction are they getting there? Yeah, and mom, I mean, what's mom's reaction?
I love when Chris starts getting into explaining the whole process with the investigation, you know, showing the positioning here. Sorry, I'm just going to put that person in time out. I support my mods 100%. And none of my mods are scammers. And I resent people coming in here and trying to bully any of my subscribers, any of my members, any of my mods. I probably should have blocked that individual. I was perhaps a little bit generous putting him in timeout. But I think I'm going to just lay it out here. In future, anyone who comes in and tries to bully any of my subscribers, any of my members, any of my moderators, you will be automatically blocked. You won't get the second chance of being put in timeout. Anyway, back to Chris. Unfortunately, they can't answer you, Bonza, because they're in timeout. unless, I mean, my other mod is being silent if she's here. I doubt it's directed at her. It's the most absurd thing that someone can come out with. And it just seems to be, it's a reflection on them, not a reflection on you. I'm just going to say that. Seems like there's some people who are far more interested in just coming to cause drama than in worrying about Lily and Jack. Yeah, apparently you are, Bonza. Welcome to membership, Little Black Bear. Okay, so going back to Chris, the insights that he gives in terms of investigation are always, I love hearing things like that. And I kind of tried to say this at the time of the press conference, but I know that I was kind of awkward with my wording and didn't explain it as well as Chris. But he's basically pointed out here that, you know, a lot of the wording of this press conference was to see how people, the people from on the property responded to the news that they believed that it was unlikely the children were still alive. And it was like not even a blip on the radar for Daniel, and nothing for Malaya because she just stayed silent.
This.
She's pretty nonchalant, man.
But wouldn't she want to be in front of the cameras? Wouldn't she want to be in front
I'll
of
run that back.
But wouldn't she want to be in front of the cameras? And that may be the response they're looking for. Instead, you get the response of everybody sitting back in the investigation going, let's see how they do. And what if they do? You've got the stepdad slicked up, you know, not saying, hey, the cop said my kids are gone. They're dead.
Right.
What kind of reaction are they getting there? Yeah, and mom, I mean, what's mom's reaction after this?
She's pretty nonchalant, man.
But wouldn't she want to be in front of the cameras? Wouldn't she want to be in front of the public and the environment saying, hey, wait a minute. You know, no, my children are not gone. We're going to find them. Okay. That, you know, there would be this pushback on the authorities.
The cops didn't say they were dead. They what they said was that the likelihood of them being alive is which is the same thing. And so basically what they're saying is if we believe your story and what you're telling us, and this is how it happened, and that they did wander off in the woods, even though the parents are now saying that it's a possible abduction, we don't believe that they'd be alive. And they wouldn't be alive if they did wander off out in the woods 11 days later. I mean, it would just be almost impossible.
But you see psychologically what they did, and the RCMP has some really good behavioral analysts. Okay. And they are very good at what they do. I will give them full kudos to that. I know that for a fact. So what they did here was they positioned the environment as the reason why the children possibly could not be deceased or could be deceased without saying it, like she was suggesting there. Okay? They said based on the conditions, that's how they entered into that space to enter into this space with these people. That wasn't for the public. Yeah, it was put out into the public, okay? But behind the scenes, if everybody's talking, right, chit-chat, okay, what do we got going here? I don't know, man, this just isn't fitting. Okay, then what's the reality based on the weather conditions, based on this other stuff that these children could be alive?
I love when Chris really gets into the psychology of it, pointing out that even though, you know, they're using this thing of if they wandered off into the woods, then they're no longer alive, pointing out that they're using that just to get into their heads, to get into Malaya and Daniel's heads. And one thing that I've been curious about from day one is when Malaya and Daniel went to that briefing, what was said at the briefing that caused Malaya to have that complete, utter panic attack, that meltdown? Because you can bet that when they got them in for the briefing, that they'd thought beforehand about what they were going to say to them in order to gauge, you know, where they were at, essentially.
Slim to none. Okay, tell me why. Give me why. Weather last night, 31 degrees. Child's in a diaper. Diaper probably would have frozen. Okay, blah, blah, blah. And you just go down the list here, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so why is the backpack introduced into this conversation as an anomaly? A 6-year-old saying, okay, let's run away together, or let's walk out together with my little brother, okay, and take the backpack, and you know, I'll leave him in his diaper. Okay. Is it possible? Of course, anything's possible. Is it probable? Probably not.
Well, Ian, today they basically announced that the search and rescue portion of the operation is over. They've had hundreds of highly trained search and rescue volunteers from across Nova Scotia and some from New Brunswick. They've been working 12-hour shifts, working through the night, and those people are being sent home at the end of the day today. So
Yeah, it seems that way. Seems like they were called in for the briefing and something was said to them to gauge their reactions. And whatever it was said, triggered Malaya. Yeah, us Aussies don't need gloves. That's the thing, Bonds, that these people don't realise that they're just going to look like complete idiots if they try and come up against Aussies, because, you know, we're not pussies. Let's put it that way.
RCMP are actually going to take over the search. They said they're going to be searching areas that have already been searched, and they're looking for clues or things that may have been missed. So the tone did change today. Throughout the last few days, they've been saying that they don't have any evidence to support that there has been any foul play. They've been saying they think the kids just wandered off from their house. But today they mentioned suspicion for the first time. They said this case is being considered suspicious, but they said all missing persons cases are considered suspicious until the investigation leads.
What do you think about that? Do you think that that's maybe like a signal, or they're just keeping all possibilities open? When I mean signal, I mean like, look, we're not really buying what you're selling here.
Yeah, right. I mean, the soggy bread syndrome, as I call it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, selling, exactly. That's kind of what I thought of. It's
so with
I agree with Josh. It was definitely them signalling that they weren't buying the story that was being put out there by Malaya and Daniel and Janie. It was we're not buying your soggy bread.
This technology, I mean, you can throw some drones up pretty quickly, and get a heat signature around those woods pretty fast. They recently found a young little boy, who had wandered 4.5 miles away from his house.
Sure.
They hit him they found him on a drone. So the fact that they've been, they're pulling back now, to your question, yeah, that's a huge red flag. Now, in a situation like this, you have to do, very specific victimology in relationship to what are the family dynamics, what's going on in the family, what's the mother's relationship, how many children are there in total.
Look, I don't think, and God forbid that I'd ever be in any position.
Sorry, I edited that bit out because then we had the conversation about all the children and then the conversation about Cody, which was wrong. And I should also point out that I think there's a point where I've got the clips out of order. Good to see you in here, Sam. You've been in hospital too. I hope you are feeling better. I have to agree with you. I just feel it's damage control. I just don't understand why Malaya didn't come out, why she went into hiding straight after her children went missing. I do a bit because of Daniel with the I'm going to weaponize what Malaya says. But still, if she's willing to still come out now after 14 months, even though Daniel's saying I'm going to weaponize what she says, then that says to me that she wasn't so much concerned about Daniel weaponizing her words, but there was another reason for her not wanting to come out.
But if I had a bunch of people out searching for my kids or stepkids or kid, and I was the one that did something with them, if I was responsible and I knew more and I wasn't telling, and I had all these people out breaking their backs looking for my children, I might say something similar to that as well.
Sure. That's what Don said.
Yes, he did.
I mean, remember, hypothetically, okay, let's just look at the two cases that we're thinking about here, right? When everything that Don said was away from him, okay, and he was concerned about, and he thanked everybody. He brought the Lord into the picture, okay. I mean, all the other stuff, right? But Candace kept her mouth shut for the most part.
Yeah, well, Mom's not really. Mom has done one 20-second little thing, but she's not talking anymore.
Okay, so now let's just, put this package together and overlay them. You've got the stepdad out there who is concerned after 6 days with the well-being of those people who are searching for the kids. Okay. And when you compare and contrast, the mother leaves the situation. She's out of the picture. Okay. Well, Grandis left too. She left almost immediately. And Candace, got, that whole situation started to unwind. But here we are years later, and some are still missing.
Just for those of you who follow Summer's case, just an observation in terms of Grandis leaving pretty much the day after Summer went missing. so just probably for those people who don't know the case, Grandis is Candace's mother, and she also lived in an RV on the property. And the day after Summer went missing, she cleared out and went to another state. Now, what is interesting about that is that in an interview that Don was doing, something about the boys and am I mute? Am I can you not hear me because I haven't got it on mute? Put a 1 up if you can hear what I'm saying. If you can't hear me, I'm not muted. Okay, sorry. It just threw me for a loop because I was like, but it's not muted. What was I saying in terms of in it? There was a weird thing that Don said in one of his interviews about CPS and the boys, and something about that they were concerned about a risk to the boys, but that risk no longer existed. Something along those lines. Now, that is really bad paraphrasing, but something along those lines. And it took me straight to the fact that Grandis had left the day after Summer went missing. And it does make me question if maybe Grandis had something to do with what actually happened to Summer. Maybe it was something Grandis did. But anyway, that's kind of going off at a tangent from Lily and Jack. But the interesting observation. Yeah, Grandis left, I think, about the day after, either 1 or 2 days after Summer was reported missing. And she actually went to a different state.
And I haven't left the house. Personally, I haven't left the house. I don't think Summer Wells got up and walked away at all in any way, shape, or form.
Right? If they wandered off, there's almost no chance that they would be alive out there in the woods. 11 days later.
72 hours is a real problem. Especially look at not these guys, well, they are, but look at the searchers. They're all in long sleeve jackets. It's raining. I mean, what's the temperature in the evening? What does that drop? How fast does hypothermia set in? You have a 4-year-old who's going to go quicker because of body mass. You're going to have a 6-year-old who's going to be able to think cognitively a little bit better than the 4-year-old. But, we call it there's what they call the 3-hour rule, right?
No, Summer has not been found. So it's been 5 years and she still has not been found. The FBI is now involved with that case. So we're all kind of hoping that there'll be some movement and maybe something will break in the near future. Yeah, there was a lot of talk in terms of the necessity for the baby to be removed from the property. So I think you probably are right. I think that RCMP probably did contact CPS when they saw the state of the property, knowing that there was still one child on the property. And while normally it's not practice to remove children from a family when children go missing, it must have been a red flag to them to have 2 children go missing at once. Yeah, no one has asked for clarification about Baby M's removal, although I think that's probably one of those taboo topics, I believe. Just going to run this back a few seconds because he's talking about that crucial time frame for reporting when children go missing.
Better than the 4-year-old. But, we call it there's what they call the 3-hour rule, right? You have within 3 hours of basically finding a child. And statistically, if that child's not found within that 3-hour period, and if it's an abduction, there's a high probability that life expectancy goes down. Now, is that the rule? No. There have been children that have been, kidnapped and held for, years and years, and they appear later on. But statistically, those odds are very low. There's a lot more that if they were kidnapped, hypothetically, they walked out of the house, as the parents are reporting, and a stranger came by and said, "Oh, look, 2 kids, let's snatch them both."
Right.
And that in of itself is an anomaly. Okay.
It's
Kidnapping.
very, very rare.
Very rare.
Very. And you saw the map earlier. Like, there's nobody out there. I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but it's rare.
Yeah.
And I think that's the reason why they've tried to push the narrative of it not being a stranger abduction, but claiming that it was, Malaya getting someone to take them and hide them somewhere. Because, Daniel does listen to what's being said. He listens to various YouTube channels. He listens to what's being said by the RCMP, by the media. So I think when him and Darren were concocting their story together, and I do believe it was a shared story, I do suspect that they went, okay, well, what we're hearing here is that a stranger abduction is just not going to fly. So let's go with this other story.
Kids, there are some kids that will survive. Okay. Of course, there always are, but in a scenario like this, with so many people in the woods who are familiar with those environments as well, the odds of them finding the children go way up, not down. And so whenever you don't find somebody, now you have to start concentrating from above ground to below ground. So you'll see the shift in the dynamics. You can bring in some types of, radar that, ground penetrating radar. You can look for anomalies over the yard, and you can see what type of dirts and geographical profiling situation where you want to look for, what's been disturbed, what's been moved.
So on that note, I put this bit in because in yesterday's live stream, I was talking about when they called off the search on the 8th. I said there must have been something that came up on the 7th that was significant enough to make them go, yep, okay, the children aren't out there. And what is significant with what Chris is saying here about seeing a shift in the investigation, when I was looking through the documents yesterday to see, what was mentioned in terms of the 7th, what I did notice was that the day after they called off the investigation was when they went back and they re-interviewed Malaya. They went and interviewed Ron McKenzie the day after calling off the investigation. And that's also when they started putting the divers in the various lakes around the area. So what Chris is saying about a shift in the investigation, when you look at it that way, you can see that as soon as they called it off, they were treating it in the way that Chris is saying, in terms of treating it as a criminal case. And that's when they were lifting the trailer and searching under the trailer and draining the septic and checking wells and putting divers in the waterways and everything. So he's named it up. He's shown us that it definitely was a pivot on day 6 when they said we're scaling back the search. It was actually a pivot to a criminal investigation.
etc. And so that's probably where they're shifting. You have two controlled environments there. You have one over by the motorhome with the.
Okay, this is where I got the clips mixed up. So I added this in at the end anyway because it was interesting hearing him talk about the controlled environments. Yeah, Orrin and Orson West. And they've not found them, but not only that, it wasn't just the whole that it happened in the home. What amazes me is that they did whatever they did to them, and then they moved. And they kept this whole thing going for, wasn't it like a year? They moved to a completely different area. Yeah, classic and sincere. That's a horrible, horrible case. I'm so glad that they are locked up and they're never getting out.
Fence. You have the yard here with the playground, etc. But then you have an uncontrolled environment. Why is that significant? Because that's the fort that's off-site that they showed. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So at what are the parameters for the children to play at that fort? Meaning, what are the rules of engagement from the parents to the children, for lack of a better term? Okay. What are the kids allowed to do outside of the supervision of any adult at that fort? So that's one of the things I would want to know as an investigator.
Okay, and that brings us to the end that I wanted to put earlier in, but I ended up tacking it on the end because I had added all those extra images at various clips in between, and if I put this at the beginning where it would have fitted, then I would have lost all the positioning of the images, just, crazy editing stuff. There is so much more in this discussion between Chris and Josh. If you are interested in hearing more of it, the links are in the description for this live stream. They're also, you can hit on like at the lab or at the interview room to go straight to their channels. I would dearly love if Chris would come and have another look at this case. I think his perspective, now that we've got so much more information, would be very interesting. Because coming from, someone with 30 years experience as a homicide detective, I think the insights that he could give us now, based on what we've learned over the last 14 months, would be very, very interesting. I mean, like I said, I guess time-wise, probably him and Josh are busy, so they're probably not going to come back to it, but it is really a shame because I would love to see Chris's perspective on this now, 14 months in. I agree, I don't think there were any rules in terms of the fort. I think they probably just went there when they wanted to. Chris is a gem. I am a huge fan of Chris and Josh. I've followed them for 5 years now, and Chris and Karen, when they're together, are just a beautiful combination. The Anita Cobby case, that's probably one that I should cover on one of our evening live streams when I'm doing the Australian stuff, because that was a I would have to be careful how I covered it, but yeah. Yes, Dr. Gary, if you ever see, if you have subscribed to the lab or to the interview room, and you ever see that they're doing a live stream with Dr. Gary, definitely go watch it. And he's got his own channel now. I don't have the link, but he does have his own channel. He's brilliant as well. Statistically, only 5 in 100 missing or endangered children involves a stranger. 19 times out of 20, it is family or friends. Someone who is family with the children means motive, opportunity. Yep. Oh, Josh is hilarious. I really haven't caught a lot of them, for quite some time, because they've been covering different cases to me. And, time-wise, it's meant that I haven't been able to check in with some of my favourite channels. But I don't know if he still does it. But Josh used to do these. When he had Chris coming on, he used to do these hilarious photo compilations where he was basically taking the mickey out of Chris, which were just hilarious. He has a wicked sense of humour, but he is so good at keeping it respectful. No, Anita Cobby was younger. It was a group of young men. And I think, if I'm thinking of the right case, she was abducted from a train station. If I'm thinking of the right case. She was meant to ring her father to pick her up from the train station when she got back in from work, and the phone box wasn't working. So she decided, because it wasn't a huge distance, that she was going to walk. Tell me if I'm wrong, if I'm thinking of the wrong case, because we've had a few of these cases. And she was basically taken, and it wasn't a good case. It was not a good case. Just having a look. I forgot about Josh's father. Yeah. It's a long time since I've caught. I really need to just allow myself a bit more chill time to catch up with some of these channels. Yeah, he's also got the Lab After Dark, which is his more casual channel. Josh and Chris, I just cannot say how wonderful they are. They do a fantastic job. I just have huge respect for the pair of them, 100%. Yeah, no, the trailer was never treated like a crime scene. Anyway, I should probably wrap it up here because it's heading up for 2.5 hours. And I'm surprised that the chihuahuas aren't pestering me to go out. Maybe they're waiting for me to finish, because it seems like Amira has now got into the habit of waiting for me to finish my live stream before she decides that she needs to go out. So if she is waiting for me, I should probably just get a wriggle on. So thanks for coming in. I've really enjoyed reading people's comments in chat and everything. I always enjoy the things that people add in these live streams. So it's been a really good one. Thank you for coming in, everyone. Please hit the like button on your way out. That certainly helps me out. Also, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Go over and send a bit of love to the lab to Chris. If you go and watch the full version of this, then leave a comment for Josh saying that you wish that he'd come and have another look at this case. I think that's about. If you're listening on replay, leave a comment below. Even if you're listening now, you can always go and leave a comment. Thanks, guys. It's been a really good one. I will catch you in the next one.